professional writing faculty and student reading of the spring semester. So tonight our special faculty guest speaker is going to be LA Times book critic and acclaimed author David Ulin. So I'm Niree, I'm the reading series coordinator. I would like to thank the Last Bookstore for agreeing to host our program again and again, and for their continued support of our events. Thank you to Davin, who's shooting the evening for the MPW YouTube page, so we can view it over and over later. Before we get started, please silence your cell phones, and feel free to hang out later and have some refreshments and snacks. So all year I've been doing these sin and virtue type juxtapositions for the readings, and tonight is going to be pride and humility. So I looked up a few quotes. Ted Turner said, "If I only had a little humility, I would be perfect." And for all the ladies out there, by Anonymous, swallow your pride occasionally. It's non-fattening. Without further ado, I would like to introduce our first student reader of tonight. Carolyn Cohagan is in her first year, fiction concentration. Her guiltiest pleasure is taking a hot bath while drinking Jack and Coke and reading an entertainment weekly. Sloth is her favorite virtue because napping is so much cheaper than cocaine. The most random thing she's proud of is having been deported from the UK. And you may not know that Carolyn has already published one novel, The Lost Children, in 2010 with Simon & Schuster. Please welcome Carolyn Cohagan.
This first piece is inspired by the fact that today is actually the 2-year anniversary of the death of J.D. Salinger. And I think that he is a wonderful example of pride. He famously would not let anyone have the movie rights to The Catcher in the Rye. And I think if the man had shown a little bit of humility, we would have already seen at least one version of the book as a film, if not several. So tonight I want to share with you a scene from a film version that we, of course, hopefully will see one day. This piece is called Jerry Bruckheimer Presents The Catcher. The camera finds old Spencer, an elderly professor, sitting covered in a blanket in a large cracked leather chair, while Holden Caulfield, tall, ruggedly handsome, and wearing a red hunting cap, sits uncomfortably on a hard bed. Old Spencer croaks, "So you're leaving Pensy, my boy?" Holden nods uncomfortably, "Yeah, I'm a real moron." Old Spencer responds, "I don't think you're a moron at all. In fact, I believe it's time someone told you who you really are." He leans forward and confides, "You are the last remaining descendant of Capri, the Egyptian god of creation." Holden laughs and says, "For Christ's sake, what a bunch of malarkey. You've been slipping too many big nose drops, sir." But old Spencer doesn't laugh. "No, Holden, it's true. I noticed the first time I met you that you bear the secret mark of Ra. Please remove your hunting cap, young man." Holden cautiously removes his hat, and we see a birthmark that looks like a sun on his upper right forehead. Old Spencer nods emphatically. "Tremendous," he cries. Holden starts to get excited. "Boy, I can't wait to tell Phoebe. It'll kill her." Old Spencer holds up his hand. "There's no time for her now, son. You've got to get going before it's too late." "Get going where? Too late for what?" "Someone's been breaking into museums and stealing the gold rings of Isis. It's up to you to stop it and return those gold rings." Holden's wary. "I don't know, Mr. Spencer. My parents will be sorry as hell if I'm not home for Christmas. There's more. I didn't want to mention it, but whoever is gathering these rings is taking them, harnessing their power, and turning innocent people." Old Spencer can't even finish the sentence. Holden braces himself. "Just say it, sir." Old Spencer's voice catches as he says, "He's turning them into illness." Holden stands and grasps his head in despair. "Not that! God damn it!" He bangs his fist on the chest of drawers. "Where do I start?" Old Spencer pulls out a remote, hits a button, and says, "I want you to say hello to an old friend." The closet door in the bedroom opens, and out walks a stunning young woman wearing glasses and a lab coat. Holden is stunned. "Sally Hayes?" Old Spencer explains, yes, Holden, Sally works for me. She specializes in organic chemistry, pyramid engineering, and Krav Maga. She'll fill you in on the situation. Now get out there and do your country proud. Holden raises an eyebrow at Sally and struts towards her. Would you happen to know where the ducks in Central Park go in the wintertime, Sally? Sally answers sassily, depends. Are you referring to the white Aylesbury or the common mallard? Holden grabs her around the waist and kisses her passionately, just as a massive fireball comes crashing through the wall, propelling him and Sally through the bedroom window and out onto the lawn. Covered in sexy burnt smudges, the two of them look back at the raging inferno of Spencer's house, in which no one could have possibly survived. Holden puts his hunting cap back on his head and whispers, God damn it, Sally. God damn it. End scene. This next piece I wrote last semester in Marcus Shart's class. And it was in September, and it's about the 10-year anniversary of September 11th. And I was very hesitant to write about September 11th. And thanks to Mark and his guidance and his promise that if we wrote about something in a way that was true and honest, that we would be able to tell an individual story, I was finally able to write a piece about September 11th. So that's what I'm going to share with you guys tonight. When September 11th happens, she's living in New York, but she isn't in New York. She's working in Canada. Fucking Canada, of all places. Her best friend has to call her from Manhattan and wake her up, because it's 3 hours earlier in Vancouver. The friend tells her to turn on the TV. The girl is still holding the phone when she watches the second tower go down, and a strange guttural noise comes out of her throat that sounds more animal than human. Soon, the rest of the apartment is waking up, and she's surrounded by Canadians and Brits who say, it was only a matter of time before this happened. The girl doesn't know yet if any of her friends were inside the towers. She watches the news for 8 hours straight, trying to reach people on the phone when she can, and when she finally goes outside for food, feeling dizzy and nauseous, but sensing it's only fair that she feels dizzy and nauseous, the streets of Vancouver are perfectly normal. People walk around like nothing has happened, yet she can barely put one foot in front of the other. It's as if she's walking through Jello, and the rest of the world is still just sugary water. She returns to CNN and the world that matters. She has 2 weeks until she flies home to New York, and there's no way to get there sooner. The time stretches out before her, seeming to be like an infinite version of the moment between hitting her thumb with a hammer and actually feeling the pain of the blow. No one she knows was killed. No one she knows by 1 degree. But she starts to hear from friends who lost people. The 2 degrees start to accumulate. When she finally returns to New York, it's almost October, usually her favorite time of the year. The leaves are changing, Halloween's coming, and the bars still have their windows and doors wide open, so you can hear the rise and fall of the Yankees fans. She gets in a cab with Gloria, and the cab driver doesn't make any small talk. She lives in a tiny studio in a brownstone on 19th Street in the East Village, and the city has closed traffic below 14th, so she knows she's barely escaped some kind of zone. There's been so much news about the air quality and the smoke and the cloud of ash that she expects to find her apartment under a layer of Mount St. Helens soot. But when she finally turns the key and opens the door, everything is normal, exactly as she left it 4 months earlier. It's not what she wants. She needs visible signs, broken furniture, ruined pictures, crushed books. She needs some havoc to reflect how she feels on the inside. The air outside seems okay, not great, just like burned plastic smell. From her neighborhood, you can't see anything. Like the rest of America, she has to watch the news to see Ground Zero, to find out what's happening. She sees her first missing pictures at the grocery store. They're pasted to the wall by the entrance. She thinks about the families who are putting up the flyers. They still think these missing people might surface, even 2 weeks later. They still hold hope in their hearts that their missing person is alive, maybe in a hospital somewhere, just confused, with amnesia, like in all those soaps they've seen. The missing flyers line the subway walls, too, hundreds of them. Photographs, black and white Xeroxes, color copies, handwritten pleas. Here's what she's been asking for, the proof that it happened. It still isn't enough. She meets up with every friend she can. Where were you when it happened? What was your experience? She hears unbearable things. The building across from me was turned into a temporary morgue. My cousin worked for Cantor Fitzgerald. He was on the top floor. There were bodies landing everywhere, and they exploded like watermelons. She and groups of friends have dinner and make emergency plans for the next time. They agree to walk across the 59th Street Bridge and head for a friend's house in Queens, spread the word. She has lunch with Rosemary, who mentions that she's volunteering nights for the Red Cross. The girl thinks, perfect. She's still looking for something. She doesn't know what yet. She decides to volunteer too. When the evening arrives, the girl is instructed to arrive at a check-in point 30 blocks away from Ground Zero. She's then corralled into a bus, which goes through several security points on the way. No one is in the streets. Every block is on lockdown. No one on the bus speaks. They're instructed to put on paper masks and hard hats. It reminds the girl of a scene in Close Encounters. The air gets denser as the bus grows closer. It's like fog, but powdery yellow. It's dark out, and there's clear plastic draping everywhere, and huge spotlights blazing through the night, and it feels like a movie set. Nothing about it can be real. She's completely turned around and wonders which direction the towers were. They pull up into the back of a Marriott hotel. She gets off the bus and is instructed to walk straight inside. She enters the Marriott, now the headquarters for the Red Cross. More clear plastic draping. It's everywhere. They've covered every scourge of carpet, all the furniture, paintings on the walls, anything that could be ruined. Because one day, this will be a hotel again. The girl wonders when that could possibly be. She checks in and is assigned to the cafeteria. She searches out the kitchen and finds an army of large women from the Midwest who are overtired, bossy, and shockingly competent. A woman with a clipboard tells her to get in the serving line and serve, with an expression that says she would have been much happier if the girl had been able to figure that out for herself. So she puts on gloves and, feeling ridiculous, a hairnet, and joins the serving line. The volunteers already there seem to feel possessive about what they're serving, so she goes where no one is standing, behind the broccoli. The rescue workers stream into the room, and the first wave seems to be mostly firemen. They're filthy from top to bottom, and just looking at them, you can feel how bone-tired each and every one of them is. They're moving slowly and deliberately, each step costing them something, and their eyes are glazed in the way that happens when you need to see, but you don't want to fathom. The smell of the food is drawing them in, giving them purpose. The girl puts on her biggest southern smile and realizes the traditional, "How are you?" is not appropriate here. No one wants to be asked. So she just asks them if they want broccoli. Most do not. What they want is big heaping plates of cheesy lasagna and bread, lots of it. They want comfort food, and the girl wants to give it to them. She now understands why the other volunteers are so possessive of their stations. You looked at these men and wanted to give them something that would make them feel better. She stands and offers broccoli for 5 hours, the grin cemented on her face. She notices that the policemen and firemen are asking about the game. A lot of the volunteers are giving them scores. The girl knows they're talking about baseball, but that's where her knowledge ends. She's jealous of the easy, mundane banter that the game enables. She wishes she could join in. She gets a quick lesson from the boy serving next to her, but she keeps saying Eric's cheater, so the plan is ill-conceived. She finally goes on break. She explores the Marriott. She's never seen so much stuff. Companies from around the country have sent their products to the Red Cross, hoping to do some good. There are mountains of sodas and chips and candy and chocolate and protein bars of every brand and variety. But there are also socks and boots and sweatshirts and flashlights and batteries and fanny packs and tape and headlamps and raincoats and on and on and on. There's so much product, there's nowhere to put it. It's piled up in every corner waiting for someone to inventory it. The girl comes upon the sleeping room, a massive conference area now lined with single beds, all with the same country inn type headboards, clean sheets, and a teddy bear lying atop the pillow. And a few of the beds are men passed out in their black suited uniforms on top of the pristine white sheets, teddy bears thrown on the floor. There's a massage room where the therapists are waiting to help the men with aches and pains, but no one is coming. One masseuse worries, maybe they don't know we're here? The girl suspects that the men and women who are working outside aren't ready to feel better. Right now it's a good search day if someone locates a finger. How can they come inside and complain about a stiff neck? But she says nothing and moves on to the next area. This is the recreation room. Lazy Boy has donated close to 50 leather recliners, and they're all grouped around the biggest large-screen TV the girl has ever seen. It's the Yankees game, the World Series, in fact. Most of the chairs are full, but the majority of the men are asleep. This is where they'd rather be. Fucking teddy bears, the girl thinks. Another volunteer asked the girl if she's been outside yet. She says no, she thought it wasn't allowed, but he shows her a side door that's open where everyone goes to see the view. She's on the 5th floor, and she walks out into an area that must have been an observation deck or patio at some point. And there it is, ground zero. It's the middle of the night, and everything is hyper-lit by electric lights the size of whiskey barrels. There are men crawling over rubble and cranes hovering over them, and there's a disturbing quiet over all of it. She watches for what seems like a long time, hypnotized, wondering what it must feel like to be down there. There's a thick layer of ash and debris on the deck where she's standing. She didn't wear a mask outside. She looks outside and sees parking garages that are still completely full. The cars are covered in yellow soot that looks like snow. It's eerily beautiful. Some of the owners will never come back. What will happen to their cars? The girl bets that there's other people trying to get access to the cars right now, calling the city at all hours, screaming about how they need to get to their Lexus immediately for that meeting in Philadelphia next week. People are assholes. She goes back inside. When she returns from her break, she's assigned to the chewing gum. There's an empty punch bowl filled to the brim with packs of Trident, and a member of the Red Cross thinks it would be nice for the girl to offer it to the rescue workers when they walk in. The girl does not. She feels like a perfume girl at Macy's, annoying and vapid. Gum? Hi there, gum? But much to her surprise, the workers take the gum eagerly, almost desperately. It goes quickly. She finally asks one of them why. He says, it helps cover the smell. The girl is ready to go home. She works a few more nights at the Marriott, but not a lot. She starts to avoid the calls from the Red Cross coordinator. She feels guilty about it. The girl goes back to work. People congratulate her for volunteering and doing her part. The girl knows better. She knows she did it for selfish reasons. She hadn't been home on September 11th. She hadn't watched the towers fall from her rooftop, inhaled the fumes of the fire, needed to walk 8 blocks. No one she knew had died. She needed to go down to ground zero and see it for herself. She needed to see terrible things and hear horrific details. She needed to suffer. Oh no, she didn't need to suffer, she wanted to. She just wanted a little, a taste. Perhaps just enough to fit into a gum-sized wrapper.
Thank you, Carolyn. If anybody needs to sit, there are a couple of chairs up here, but I won't force you because I don't like telling people what to do. Our next reader is Taiesha Flenaugh. Taiesha finished last December. She's a fiction concentration. Her guiltiest pleasure is staying in bed and sleeping all day, but that only happens about once a year. Wrath is Ty's favorite sin because it is the fuel she needs at times to keep her moving ahead, and hope provides the perspective to learn from every failure. The most random thing Taiesha is proud of is that since she's been practicing yoga, she can stand on her head for a minute in 3 different positions. You may not know that Taiesha grew up in Alaska and that, yes, black people do live there. Ladies and gentlemen, Taiesha Flenaugh.
Okay, I'm going to be reading an excerpt from my novel in progress, and it's called An Apple and And it is introduction to the characters, and the main theme of the novel is the cycle of teenage motherhood and poverty and such. From behind my grandmother's plaid couch, sunlight spilled through the floor-to-ceiling windows, warming my neck and back. Holding an orange, I sat next to my brother, Keenan. Grandma handed him an apple. She wanted us to take a picture of the fruit, one last photograph in her living room. Wearing my favorite yellow tank top and tough-skin jeans, I tried a few poses. Like the fruit, we were California grown, but we were leaving that evening on a flight for our new home in Fairbanks, Alaska. Say cheese, Grandma said in the high pitch she used for speaking to her grandbabies. I was so busy trying to hold up the orange and smile and say cheese that I closed my eyes when it flashed. From a thin slit at the base of the camera, the film slid out. She shook it. Short with pole-thin legs, Grandma wore a burgundy skirt and a silky blouse. Only 50 years old, she didn't look like she had 11 grandkids. One living room wall was filled with pictures of Keenan, Mama, me, my 8 aunts and uncles and cousins. Mama stood up against the wall and watched us. Her eyes burned bright under the sun windows. "Can I shake it, Grandma?" "Tani, you are too little to shake the Polaroid. You might mess it up." "I won't mess up the polar bear, I promise," I said, grabbing for the picture. Mama laughed at me, and Keenan sucked his lips. "It ain't polar bear, it's the name of the camera, Tani." "So what?" I said, still reaching forward. Grandma held the picture out of my grasp and handed it to Mama. My mother began blowing and waving it. I ran to her and tugged on a belt loop of her tight jeans. After the picture cleared, she lowered it so I could see. "Look it, all done." Touching Mama's wrist, I moved her towards me. In the photo, I looked funny with my eyes closed and skin as shiny as the apple. Keenan was much taller than me. One of his thin arms was stretched out on the couch armrest. His straight teeth bothered me, my front teeth hadn't grown back yet. To me, it always seemed like we were the same age. 6 years old wasn't that much older. I was 5. "Tani, let go. Stop being so forceful," Mama said, twisting out of my grip. Keenan bumped into me. "Can I see Mama, please?" he said, holding out his hand. "See, Tani, Keenan is being patient. He's waiting like a good boy," she said, patting his head. Keenan smiled as she looked at the picture from her. His bright orange eyes and long eyelashes matched hers. I crossed my arms and frowned at Keenan before returning to the couch. Grandma turned on the television, a floor model as tall as a community. "You little ones, come here and watch cartoons," she said, pointing to his face on the carpet. My brother and I raced to sit in front of the television. He won, but I was close behind him. Grandma motioned to Mama, waving toward the back of the house. I turned around to see my mother, standing behind us with tear-filled eyes. I knew they were going to talk about something important. She disappeared down the long hallway. Keenan started whining. "Where are you going, Mama?" She stopped and closed her eyes for a moment. "Keenan, just watch TV. You'll be in the back." "Okay," he mumbled. I watched cartoons for a few more minutes, but I really wanted to know what they were talking about. "I need to go to the bathroom," I said. Laughing at Wile E. Coyote, Keenan ignored me. As I tiptoed down the shaded hallway, I worried that they'd hear the creaking floor. Grandma's perfume, smelling like sweet-rutting alcohol, hung in the air. I found them in my grandparents' bedroom, with the door cracked so that I could see Mama and Grandma sitting on the king-size bed holding hands. A tear rolled diagonally across Mama's red nose. When she cried, I always got really scared. Instead of going inside, I stayed in the hallway. My fear quieted me. If they saw me, they would have stopped talking and made me go back to the living room, like they always had. Grandma was speaking. "You may have your doubts about leaving, but I don't. You gotta get out of this place, boy." The room, square and crowded, had one window dressed in white lacy curtains that seemed to sigh as the wind floated through. Facing the street, it carried in the put-put-put of an old car. Mama sat up straight and smoked. The two focused in on each other, face to face. "You're too much like me. When I met your daddy, I was 19. I already had your brothers, Ray and Ryan. Neither one of their dads was helping. So I had to move on. Like you have to with Percy. I don't want to talk about him. He don't help. He got those other kids now," Mama said, putting a hand to her head like she was in pain. "Percy was supposed to be our father, but I didn't remember him. Keenan did, though. He had asked about him a few days before. I don't know why, but Mama had snapped at him, told him to shut up." In the distance, a siren wailed. They both looked toward the window before she continued. "But we've got to talk about it. I don't want this happening anymore," Grandma said. Mama crossed her arms. Patting her knee, she continued. "It'll be all right. Keep that house clean and stay cute." A smile forced itself on Mama's serious face. "Mabel, you keep hinting about a husband, but..." She always called her mother Mabel by her first name. Now you know if your crazy sister Denise went up there and got married, you can go up there and find a daddy for those kids. But if I just have a safe neighborhood for them, if I could just start over, that would be enough. Grandma acted like she hadn't heard and narrowed her eyes. But make sure, whoever he is, that he loves those kids and he accepts them. Okay, Mabel. Danita, your daddy never could accept Ray. And now, my grandmother's voice broke as a muffled cry came from deep within. She had been crying a lot since Uncle Ray had been shot and killed a few months earlier. Mama started crying again, too. I held my breath. Mabel, she said, stroking Grandma's back. From the living room, I heard Keena knocking at the door. Outside, another car roared down the street. Rubbing the tears away, she put a hand to her chest. Danita, we're not going to let that happen to Keena, right? I had never heard them talk like this before. Why would anything like that ever happen to Keena? Mama sat up straight. No, Mabel. I'm doing my best to take care of both of them. These years will go by, and if he doesn't have what he needs when he leaves you, the world out there will get him. There are a lot of things that can get a man a child, especially a black one. Uncle Ryan was in jail. He couldn't even go to Uncle Ray's funeral. That's why I read to them every night. I make sure I talk to them both about making good decisions, Mama said. Grandma took both of her daughter's hands. I know, but it's still hard no matter what you do. I did everything I could, but you still got pregnant. Too young. Short with wide, shy eyes, Mama still looked like a teenager. But she was 22. People were always surprised when they found out that Keena and I were her children. Yeah, Mabel, I know, but Grandma put a hand on her hip. You know now, don't you? Well, I couldn't tell you nothing a few years ago. Watch that baby girl, Danita. Keep her close and away from those boys. You got that right. She needs to know that boys are bad, she said, shuffling fist. What was so bad about my brother? He wasn't a boy. She's already cute, Grandma said, nudging her. Shit, the cute girls are more trouble than the funny-looking ones. They laughed. The bedroom window rattled from a passing car playing music. I'm on her, Mabel. She's so strong-willed, though. Now I nodded and turned to look sideways at Mama. Now, who do you think she get that from? Mama threw up her hands. Well, I guess she got it honest. Get a husband with a good job and a heart for loving my two babies in there, Grandma said, wrapping an arm around Mama. If I find someone, I'll make sure of it. When you meet someone, figure out if you'll be a good father first. They stood up and hugged. I tiptoed back to the living room.
Thanks, Ty. Our next reader is Kelsey Nolan. Kelsey is in her first year fiction concentration. Her guilty as pleasure is crime shows like Law & Order, Criminal Minds, CSI, which usually causes her to jump to the worst conclusions possible. The sin Kelsey indulges in most is gluttony, and after Wikipedia-ing for this question, she learned there are 6 ways to commit it: eating too soon, too expensively, too much, too eagerly, too keenly, and too wildly. And she typically does all of those things on a daily basis. She is most proud of her unusual mix of Mexican and Irish, which gives her no choice but to be Catholic, an excuse to drink, and a family that never quits. And you may not know that Kelsey could eat sushi and burritos every day and be perfectly content. Kelsey Nolan.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kelsey, and this is a piece I wrote for tonight. And I figured it would fit in well with the Pride and Humility theme. So here goes. It's called The Bathroom. You're getting off a long flight. From where? From anywhere, really. It doesn't matter how long the flight was, because the reality is you'd feel sticky and sweaty even if it was a 7-minute jaunt over the west side of LA during Carmageddon. But in this case, it was somewhere significantly further away. You were on an overnight flight home from a business trip in London. And your business can't afford the so astutely named business class since it's a startup company, so you rode an economy class, coach, with the pill upholstery under your butt and the person next to you who wants to chat with you for 6 hours, or who snores, or who inevitably spills his drink on you when trying to get up to use the bathroom. And you always get seated in the middle when you're traveling by yourself, since the universe knows you aren't lonely enough and wants to remind you how insufferably alone you really are by placing you in between a couple who accidentally chose the wrong seats when purchasing. Here we are, It's 9 a.m. California time, and while you gather your belongings from the seat back pocket in front of you, it takes you a few minutes to figure out that that means it's 5 p.m. in London, and it blows your unsettled mind that you've just time traveled to the past. You wonder what you look like right now, since you didn't bother to check yourself out in the piece of flattened tin they call a mirror in the airplane bathroom. The flight attendants smile, seemingly genuine smiles at you while you unsteadily hold your purse, your computer case, your peacoat. You try to wipe away the marks on your face you feel from your neck pillow and the crusted drool from the corner of your mouth. As you push past other people, those waiting to get on the airplane you just disembarked from, you smile because they look to be amateurs of travel. That man and woman who argue at each other because he misplaced their tickets, the last man in an empty boarding area who is still completely asleep. You drag on until you see a woman's restroom and realize you must pee. Really, you aren't bothering to get your overworked mind from one thought to the next as much as you're trying to keep one foot in front of the other. Some people may sleep well on red-eye flights, and you would very much like to shake their hand, whoever they may be. You walk in the doorless entryway and wait in the rapidly expanding line. You recognize the middle-aged woman from your flight whose stomach bulges and rebels against the top of her pants as she changes the diaper of her infant. To your surprise, you don't remember that baby crying at all during your arc over the lower 48, and you give silent kudos to that frumpy woman for whatever tricks she used to keep her child quiet. Perhaps she drugged him. That's probably it. Some whiskey on the gums? Will you do that to your own children to save yourself the embarrassment of apologizing to raised eyebrows on long flights just like this one? All 26 years of you gives a resounding yes. You wait with your bladder in protest, while women come in and out of the shared sanctuary with its bright white lights and matching tile. Oh my God, I'm totally breaking out, you hear. You turn your attention towards two girls standing at the sink in TSA uniforms. Their shirts are unbuttoned, revealing their white undershirts. The girl who spoke is groping the olive-colored skin under her lip-lined bottom lip with two index fingers, jutting her chin toward the mirror, leaning in. I don't see anything, the opposite girl with harshly gelled curly hair responds. She doesn't spare a glance towards her friend because she is pushing up her own breasts with both hands and then letting them fall back into place, or perhaps even lower. She's frowning at them. I'm serious, it's right there. This is a big deal. I have a date tonight, the first girl whines. She's starting to put something she pulled out of her bag onto the red spot her fingers left. This gives you a panicky, highly uncomfortable jumpstart in your sleep-deprived fog, since you suddenly remember that your new boyfriend is picking you up from the airport. Up until this moment, you forgot to give him a thought, considering he hasn't occupied much of your brain space for very long. He was on the opposing team of the co-ed Sunday night soccer league you do with some girlfriends during the second game of the season, and he told you you had some good balls during the game, for a girl. At first you thought he was being a jackass. After the 4 beers he got you, you considered it endearing. You've been together for a grand total of 20 days, and he most certainly has not seen you looking any worse than your carefully planned, sporty look, complete with light makeup during the soccer games. Your heart's racing now, and you're starting to sweat, again. It's your turn to pee, finally. You flail into the stall and throw your belongings on the ground. They must clean this bathroom, what, like 3 times a day? That's definitely cleaner than the floors of your own apartment's bathroom. You sit down to do your business. While you're sitting, you search through your purse to see what kind of makeup you have sitting at the bottom of it. You certainly didn't put excellent multitasker on your resume for nothing. You definitely didn't plan very well for this, since your standard makeup is packed safely away in your suitcase, which you're picking up at baggage claim, where your meeting boyfriend. Wait, you can't remember if he said you guys were official or not. What you do remember is him saying, "We're good," but nothing about girlfriend. Okay, you need to remember not to say anything about friend of any sort this morning. Ah, you feel some eyeliner amidst the clutter. Perfect. You remember a girl you went to high school with who used to use pen as eyeliner, and if you had to, in that moment, you probably wouldn't rule that out either. You flush and collect your things again, weave through the throng of women all trying to do what you're doing, find a space in wet countertop. This is when you get a first good look of yourself since the night before, and in this moment, you regret all of it. Agreeing to the overnight flight just because it saved the company $500, accepting potential boyfriend's offer to pick you up from the airport because he said he was wilting away without you, and let's be honest, that made you feel needed. You even regret sleeping on the flight because maybe you could have pulled off the oh-so-glamorous up-all-night look. But alas, your shoulder-length blonde hair is starting to separate from a lack of washing, and the ends do not fall in line like they do when you spend the time to straighten it. Plus, there's a nasty cowl in the back from where you slept on it during the night. The makeup you put on before you left is now clumped in the corner of your eyes, and the purple circles under them reveal just how tired you really are. And to your horror, you notice that you are the one breaking out, right there on your forehead where you have no bangs to cover up. Well, no turning back now, you think to yourself. Wetting your hands, you frantically try to calm your hair down with a pocket brush you found in your purse from your last business trip. You give a prayer of thanks to the universe for your oversight in unpacking. Suddenly, a woman comes out of the stall closest to you, and she forces you to pause with your hands over your head because she is so perfectly put together you can't not stare. Sleek and shiny and orderly long black hair that reminds you of patent leather, tall Louboutin stilettos, which she obviously walks easily in, a pair of jeans that fit her tiny, fit legs and her rear, which is shaped like a three-dimensional C. She notices you staring at her, arms still in the air, and gives you an acknowledging smile, showing no teeth and lasting only as long as necessary. She makes you feel overly self-conscious. Once she's done washing her hands, she begins to put on a red lipstick that complements her pale skin so nicely, you can't help but think that the same shade of lipstick would make you look like a back alley hooker if you were wearing it at 9 o'clock in the morning. She leaves you standing at the wet sink with the rest of the average-looking women in the Los Angeles airport, and you scoff, more to yourself than anyone else. But the woman next to you hears you and says, "Oh, I know, honey. She puts the rest of us to shame, doesn't she?" She throws out an elbow in your general direction. Ugh, yeah, especially right now. I'm supposed to meet a guy looking, well, like I've just flown all night on a rocky plane. You admit to this woman, who appears to be in her mid-60s. She wears a red skirt suit. Her white hair is shaped like a bell, and the wrinkles on her face seem to have a pattern. You consider the idea that it probably wouldn't be terrible to look as put together as her either. "Oh, don't you worry, dear," the woman winks at you. "Look where you are." You look at her like she's speaking a different language. She goes on, overlooking your confusion. "Why, you have no idea what kind of resources you can find in the women's restroom at LAX. Now, I have to board my flight in 15, but let's get you cleaned up before I go." "Oh my, did you know you have some pimples on your forehead?" You laugh out loud at this remark, and whether it's the sleep deprivation or your desire to get this guy to call you his girlfriend, you accept the help she's offering. She hands you some face powder, and you try to do some work on the haggard mess in front of you. The fluorescent lights are not helping you here. You hope it's foggy outside, anything to buffer your face from potential boyfriend's eyes. The woman, Millie, tells you, "Now listen here, this is important. We women are a rare breed, and the better gender, in fact. If you want men to want you, you can't ever let them see you without your face on. In all my years and all my husbands, I've never been without my face, and I think I'm the better for it. I've always held the upper hand. The key is to remain a mystery to them. We don't want men to know all our secrets now, do we?" She asks you. Trying to look stern, you shake your head as you flatten out your wrinkled pink button-down shirt. "Right, we work hard to remain mysterious, so don't walk out of here and ruin all the hard work we've done, okay?" She leans in, takes a deep sniff, and calls out to the whole restroom. "Does anyone have some deodorant they can lend over here? It's an emergency." You see the whole group of women react, some in disgust, some in an earnest search for the desired object, and some trying in vain to pretend like they didn't hear. Your face reddens, but you don't shush Millie because in all honesty, you know that you need it. You silently chastise yourself again for not being better prepared for this. A woman, close to 35, comes by with a knowing smile and says, "It's a travel deodorant that I forgot I had in my purse. Never been used." "Oh, splendid. Thank you," Millie responds with heavy emphasis on the last word. She hands it to you, and as you're using it, she says, "Now, dearie, I think we did pretty good, all things considered. All you need now is a splash of perfume, and you'll have that man tripping all over himself." She's raised you with a travel-sized bottle of Chanel No. 5, of course. You thank her for the vote of confidence and the makeup, and she simply moves her head up and down. "You go get him, dear, and don't forget what I told you. Never reveal the secrets of our kind." She winks one last time at you and bustles out, purposefully wagging her behind. You wonder where she's going. You gather your things, take a deep breath, and prepare to go meet what you're hoping is the last new boyfriend you'll ever have.
Thank you, Kelsey. Nicole Antonio is in her second year, poetry concentration. Her guiltiest pleasure is watching The Real Housewives of Orange County, but it's more guilt than pleasure. Gluttony is her favorite sin because regardless of what Kate Moss says, there are so many things that taste better than skinny heels. The oddest thing Nicole is proud of is breaking her nose in the middle of a judo match, then going on to win anyway. They almost didn't let her finish the match because you're not allowed to have blood on your GI. You may not know that after taking 5 years of Chinese, all Nicole remembers to say is, "I forgot everything." Nicole Antonio. Sorry, it's super short, so I'm like, I don't know what this microphone. Alright, so I have
recommendation you'll hear tonight. The first piece is a poem that used to be called Before, and then I reread it yesterday and thought that is a really, really terrible title, but I couldn't think of anything better. So that's just the poem formerly known as Before. I craved that torture, slapping the mat with my palm or back or skull so I could slam someone else against it. The satisfaction when I hugged my chin and elbows to my chest, and no one could turn me on my back. The purple black that crept in when dojo doors sealed in stale air, thick with sweat and heaving breaths. When I was too close to failing weight to join a water break. When I could sweat off 3 pounds in 2 hours. When I'd spend all day spitting into a water bottle just to drop a measly 0.1 foot of meat. When fingerprint bruises turned into fractured ribs and dislocated shoulders over-rotated like Barbie doll arms. When feet smashed against the floor to jam spilled toes back into place. My take was an honor, not a weakness. Those were the days when I had permission to scream and empty my lungs before bowing into a match. So the next one is not a judo match, and it's called Gentle Way, which is the literal translation of judo from Japanese to English. And so in judo, it's called gentle because it's not a striking sword, meaning like you don't throw punches, you don't throw kicks, instead you grab the other person's clothes and drag them across the mat and try to slam them into the floor and like pin them down. So it's a very gentle and civil sport. But the other thing that actually is legitimately civil about it is there's a certain respect and ceremony surrounding each match. And so you have to bow before you take your first step onto the actual mat where you're going to be having a match, and then you also bow at a certain line that's about 10 feet away from your opponent. Then you proceed to drag each other around and throw each other around and whatever, choke each other out. Then you, at the end of the match, when the tag is over, someone's won, someone has enough points, you go back to those lines, you bow at each other, and then before you take your last step off the mat, you bow again. And so this is Gentle Way. Bow at the edge, bow at the line. Hajime, one step forward, and it's over that fast. Then you sidestep, grab, resist the other, hooks your ankle, mid-step, hip taps the mat, koga, small boy. Not yours. 1 minute in, and you're already burning and blurry and down. Armbar across your throat, chin down, clench every joint to your chest, fingers pry the count and lock you, so the ref calls, mate, reset. Breathe, hajime, grab, twist, kick, brace, block, sprawl, stand, step, fake, throw, fall forward, on top of the other, chest to chest, to back to mat. Ihon, win. Bow at the line, bow at the edge. Breathe. And then, so this last piece is the second half of a short story about a girl named Crystal who is at the tail end of a mixed martial arts practice / class. And she's already had 2 matches with guys about her weight. She's in the middle of a 3rd match against a guy about twice her size. And the sort of deal is that she pulls out against him, and she gets to have a match against her ex-boyfriend. Lasting 5 minutes on the mat with Vince is like sprinting half a mile with a 200-pound gorilla on my back. But it'll be worth it if I last long enough to get the crap out of Jacob. He opens with 2 jabs to my body and a quick hook to my head, and I can't send anything back because his reach is so damn long. My ears begin to ring from the hit, even with the padded headgear. He gets brave and tries a roundhouse at one point, but his Muay Thai is weak, and I catch his leg without a problem. Squeeze his ankle under my armpit and hold his calf while trying to sweep his remaining leg. Either I'm too short or he's too tall, I just can't reach. The rest of the class laughs while they see what's going on. I yank his leg forward and lunge for his thighs, hoping for a surprise takedown. Vince knows better and sprawls on top of me. With my head smashed against the mat, a cocoa-colored Hulk on top of me, I don't care whose blood, sweat, or hairs leave smear across my face. I don't care if I get cancer from inhaling the yellow grains of synthetic foam dust, I just want to know if Jacob cares. He's barely looked at me since the ex waved her magic tits and took him back, changed his practice schedule so we wouldn't see each other in the gym anymore. To get this match tonight, I had to come 20 minutes late so he couldn't bail the class to get away from me. Vince tries to clasp his hands around my waist, and I remember I'm not to Jacob yet. Unable to see my clock through Vince's monstrous torso, I no longer have any delusions of beating him. I just want to survive him. I try to tuck my elbows and knees beneath my body, so I have more space to move against him, which is like doing a push-up with the aforementioned gorilla on my back. While I scroll for breathing room, Vince grabs my left arm and goes to work. I immediately withdraw my other 3 limbs, beginning to resemble a turtle, but I know I'm screwed now that he has my arm. The last thing I should do is give him my back, but my judo roots side hard so I stay climbed up. He cranks my arm to turn me over for a pin, and I'm surprised he doesn't go for an arm bar from his existing position. My arm can only rotate so far before we both feel my shoulder pop out of the socket. cash register, or maybe those nerves have just died after a decade of martial arts abuse. Either way, Vince is stunned, and I'm not in pain, so I turn my body for better positioning, my shoulder slipping back in at a slightly different angle from the one at which it dislocated. The room seems quieter, lacking the normal roars and calls of ignored advice. I wonder if the arm thing looked that bad. I want to see the look on Jacob's face. I don't have time to wonder long because Vince lunges at me again, and I'm ready to grapple, but that arm just doesn't seem to work anymore. He gains top control and tries to set things up to choke me out. I refuse to be pinned, not after all this. His legs clamped around my waist. He leans down to get my hands out of the way. I send a sharp jab to his nose instead. It's a shitty move, and we both know it. My hand is so much smaller than his headgear that it lands between the padded cheeks, delivering some real damage. Blood drizzles from his nostrils, and I put my hand to my face without thinking because my body knows what comes next. Tightening his hold on my torso, he squeezes the air out of my lungs and throws a relentless stream of punches at my head, ground and pound, to use the technical term. Painful as shit, to use my terms. He doesn't care. I think Jacob doesn't care. He's just sitting there watching Vince turn me into pulp and not saying a word to stop it. I don't hear the clock buzz when it runs out. I can't see, hear, or feel much of anything. All I know is that the blows stop when Vince stands up and walks away. I want to jump to my feet, but my bones have been replaced with wet sand, and I have a stomachache in my skull. I don't know how that works. There's probably a professional involved. Everything feels tight, suffocating, even though I'm free to gasp after spitting out my mouth guard. The coach and some of the guys crouch beside me, ask if I'm okay, can I see how my fingers and whatnot. I want to tell my balding coach that the sweat dripping off his jowls and into my periphery isn't helping. The ground belts leave my side to keep the rest of the class at a distance. One of them was my first match tonight, 2 inches taller and 10 pounds lighter than me. I rip off my headgear and realize I wasn't supposed to last this long. The coach gave me an impossible lineup, knowing Jacob had to be last. The guys are still trying to protect him. As I get off my back and lean forward, blood rushes up to start the swelling, causing my ears to burn and my jaw to ring. I drag myself up, trying not to sway when I say, "It's okay, I'm okay, one more." The coach tells me my arm is dangling. No, it's fine. I grab my left wrist and hold my arm about 30 degrees from my body, then rotate the Davin. The joint crunches as it jumps closer to its natural position. Everyone cringes, and I flex my hand at eye level. See, it's all good. My face tingles, and I'm having trouble seeing out of the one eye that has begun to swell shut. One more, I tell the coach. Last one. What the hell are you trying to prove? Vince shouts from the far end of the room, a bloody washcloth full of ice already on his face. I look at his 3 predecessors, all of whom nurse their own ice packs and shiners. This isn't out of the ordinary for the end of practice. The one person doesn't usually cause all the damage alone. I know this looks bad, but damn it, I deserve this last match. I look at the coach and try not to beg. Please. Chris, Jacob says behind me. I turn to face him and he continues, "It's not worth it." He looks sad. Sorry. Too clean to have just finished 2 hours of practice. My right hook hits the side of his mouth, not really knocking his jaw, but landing exactly where I want. He stumbles backward and I pick up my headgear. "Okay," I say, "all done." As I walk away, I don't know if he's bleeding, I don't know if anything's broken. I'm pretty sure I won't make it out of bed tomorrow, but I do know that his fat lip will hurt for at least a week, making him flinch every time she kisses him.
Our final student reader of tonight is Davin. He's in his 2nd year of screenwriting concentration. His guiltiest pleasure is pretending to listen to somebody while planning a new story in his head. His favorite sin is vainglory or unjustified boasting because you don't have to do anything to earn it. David is most proud that he's made it this far in life with a crippling disease. And you may not know that he's not actually a mean person. I never thought that. Davin.
Longer short story that I won't have time to read tonight, but hopefully it'll be wanting a little bit more. It's called I Bought a Little Library. So I bought a little library. It was dark and public and told the whole staff not to worry or when you had to leave, or to do everything gradually. So I walked around the library and thought to myself, this suits me fine. It suited me fine, so I began to change it. Began by chasing out all the gay cruisers in the bathroom and told them they weren't welcome at this library. Then I told the homeless people at the computers, get the hell out. I made it a policy that my staff was not to waste time helping those damn kids with their incessant school projects. Ain't changed it? Figure it out for yourself. Human anatomy, go look it up in the card catalog, which is actually a computer these days. The staff approached these changes warily, asking me what the point was. But really, what's the point of anything anyhow, I asked him. We're all going to die one day, right? Might as well get on with it. When Mabel spoke up, one of the staff members, her voice trembling after I had said this, and asked, "Excuse me, sir, how does this have anything to do with the change you just outlined?" I told her to shut her damn mouth. The whole staff, which is mostly women, mind you, all gasped rather oddly, and Mabel ran out of the room crying. I said, "Fuck," and thought I'd better go apologize, which I did. I'm no monster. And I brought her back in and said, "Look, everyone, change is hard. We have to get on with it." They all looked at me confused and concerned. I saw no reason to think that what I had just said didn't settle the matter, so I walked out and let them stew on it. Turns out this is not the most effective management style. I had never managed so many women in my life, so I guess I had a lot to learn. They cried a lot, for one. Anyway, a bunch of them came in my office not long after the meeting and told me they were going to see about quitting. Well, I didn't know how to shelve books myself and talk to little kids, so I couldn't have a large chunk of my staff quitting all of a sudden. So I asked them, which policy of mine you have the most trouble with? They told me, all of them. I said, no, this is not how negotiations work. You tell me one thing you want changed, and I'll consider it. They conferred for a moment. They said the biggest problem they guess they had with me was the policy barring them from helping kids with their school projects. I said, all right then, you can help the damn kids with their school projects, as long as I don't have to talk to them. Peggy Sue spoke up and said, no, the homeless people, they need access to information. That's the biggest problem. I said, Peggy Sue, is this a public library anymore? She kind of shrugged and said, I think so? And I said, no, I'm a private citizen. I own this library now. She asked why it still said Garfield Public on the outside of the building then. I said, good point, I hadn't thought about that. But now, we're going to have to change it to something more boring and corporate. Maybe a New Horizon book depository or something along those lines. Staff started to grumble their disapproval, and I said, now listen up. This is my library now, I'm going to run it the way I damn well please. But I want you all to stay, because you do a marginally good job as far as I can tell, so for that I'm willing to allow you to talk to the kids. As long as you keep them out of my way. Now, does that sound fair? We have to continue having this pointless meeting. They all shrugged and said they thought that sounded fair enough. I said I can do with fair enough. I go on, we'll stack those books, whatever the hell it is you all do. They all shuffled out, and that was the end of that. So I got to be feeling pretty good about myself. I had this library, I had a staff that was happy, but not too happy. You never want your staff to be too happy. And I had good policies in place, good policies. Policies that would make my library a shining example of an institution compared with all those government-run hellholes. Yes, everything was going swimmingly. That is, until the city building inspector came by and told me my building was too big for its permit. I asked him how that could be if it used to be a public building. He told me that was just the point, that it used to be, and it used to turn a blind eye, civic duty and all, he said. But now he was going to have to cite me, and I would have to fix it, or pay. Death and taxes, my friends. I didn't much like the city inspector, a portly fellow, I might add. And I must admit, I thought about having him disappear. Those days were behind me now, and I knew civic life. A civic life going to a formally public building. And in this new life, I would help people, not hurt them. I figure out life can balance itself out on the whole, by which I mean, if you do enough good things in your life, perhaps you can make up for the bad. So I told the city inspector as I leaned on the roof of his car, his open doors, and sat idling, it's your lucky day. I'm not going to have anything done to you. He asked me if that was a veiled threat. I laughed and said, of course not. But maybe it was to some extent. But anyhow, I said to him, if it is a threat, it's not very veiled, now is it? He didn't quite seem to know how to say this. The truth of it was, I wanted a quiet life at this library. I wanted to forget about my past, forget about all the nasty things I had done in it. Kind of like when people would come to me when they needed help with a problem. They would come to me for advice, for information, for favors. I would think of it, it's not that different from my former life, but that's not the point. What matters here are not my own personal moral struggles, but rather my interaction with this library. You see, when I took a look at the blueprint so kindly provided by the city's inspector's office, at a small fee, I might add, I realized what this inspector was seeing, and I wondered how had this slipped my notice. The building, you see, was in fact infinite. It never ended, at least on paper. Immediately went over to the information desk where Mabel was working at the moment. She saw me approach, and in a chipper voice, mocking me as I came, said, "How can I help you today, sir?" I said, "Mabel, cut the shit out." I was just joking around, she said. "No time for jokes. What's the deal with this library? Don't bullshit me, woman." "Excuse me, woman." "Oh, Mabel, I'm just an old man that gets confused. You know what I mean. What's the deal?" "The deal?" she asked. "Yes, the deal. Why do the blueprints show that it never ends?" She looked around a bit, almost suspiciously, as if someone may have been watching us. "How could a blueprint show that?" she asked, trying to stall. "Mabel, level with me now," I told her. She took another glance around the room and lowered her voice. "You ever read The Library of Babel?" she whispered. "The Library of what?" "Shh," she said. "The Library of Babel by Jorge Luis Borges." "Jorge? The janitor?" "Oh," she said. "The author. Mabel, will you tell me what the fuck you're talking about? It's a short story about a library that has every possible book in it ever written. Every book that was, or will be, or could be written. How the hell is that possible? You take every possible word and find them in a uniform way, getting every possible combination in every possible book. I must take millions of books, I ask. More than that, try a billion to the billionth degree. You know, an expo. Hey, well, I'm a simple man. I like simple things. Well, this library is not a simple thing. It's one of the most wonderful things humans have ever made. Well, humans possibly made. We don't even know who or what built it. I don't have time for this fanciful bullshit. No, sir, this is true. Then why the hell did the city sell it to me if this library is so goddamn precious? Well, theories vary, but I personally think, do you know how much it costs to keep up an infinite library? Yes, a lot, I'm finding out. The maintenance on this place is absurd. The damn government can't run anything. I'm going to have to come in here and cut the waste. Cut the waste? No, sir. If this place isn't properly kept up, the books will rot. They'll get water damage. They'll be lost forever. Oh, bullshit. Listen, books are books. Now tell me, how have you kept this a secret for so long? It's not a secret. Just most people don't come here anymore. It's kind of fallen out of vogue. Going to a library, people don't do it. I'd like to change that, though. That's one area we can agree on, Mabel. I went back to my office to think things through. This was way more than a headache that I was looking for. An infinite library, a mysterious janitor named Jorge, a probably infinite maintenance bill. I didn't want any part of it. Then it finally hit me. I started to understand some of the garbage Michael was spouting. Not only was there every piece of information already known to man in this library, but there was every piece of information not yet known, too. Now, I may be a simple man with a sort of violent past, but I knew right away that what this could mean for humanity, for my country, for my city, and for me. Technological advances, better public policy, better city planning, better lives for a lot of people, including myself. I don't apologize for being a capitalist, not one bit. But if I help out my fellow man, my fellow countrymen, my fellow citizens, and sock away a few bones for myself, well, why not? What's wrong with that? It's what we call a win-win situation. And for someone that knows how to handle it properly, it can also be a very profitable situation. Luckily, I was just the man that knows how to handle a situation properly.
Thank you, David, and thank you to all of our student readers for reading tonight. You were all so good. So, our faculty reader tonight is David Ulin. David L. Ulin is book critic of the Los Angeles Times. From 2005 to 2010, he was the paper's book editor. He is the author of The Lost Art of Reading, Why Books Matter in a Distracted Time, and The Myth of Solid Ground, Earthquakes, Prediction, and the Fault Line Between Reason and Faith. His next book, a collection of linked essays about walking in Los Angeles, will be published by the University of California Press in 2013. He is also the editor of 3 anthologies, Cape Cod Noir, Another City Writing from Los Angeles, and Writing Los Angeles, a literary anthology, which won a 2002 California Book Award. His essays and criticism have appeared in The Atlantic Monthly, The Nation, The New York Times Book Review, Granta, Black Cloth, Bookforum, Columbia Journalism Review, and on National Public Radio's All Things Considered. He teaches in the Master of Professional Writing program here at USC, and in the Low Residency MFA Creative Writing Program at UC Riverside's Palm Desert Graduate Center. David will be reading about one guilty pleasure this evening. But, he ponders, can pleasure ever really be guilty? Sloth is his favorite sin because what other sin compares? He's most proud of the fact that he's made it to the age of 50 without ever having had a job he hated or didn't want to go to or couldn't wait to get out of. It's a miracle and he's grateful every day. And you may not know that David loves the New York Yankees with a burning passion, and that he's rooting for the Giants again in the Super Bowl. Ladies and gentlemen, David Ulin.
Thanks for all of you for coming. I'm going to read something that probably does have a lot to do with pride and humility. It'll also have, there'll be a moment in the middle where I will blush with embarrassment. So, this is for the birthday girl. It's called The Made Man. In the fall of 1985, when I was 24 and a year out of college, I moved with my then girlfriend, now wife, Ray, onto a block in Lower Manhattan that was controlled by the mob. We did not know this when we rented our apartment, nor would we have cared particularly. New York in the mid-'80s was a city literally bereft of housing, and we were glad to find a place that had a modicum of breadth to it, 2 decent-sized rooms and a small separated kitchen up 3 flights and a Soho walk-up, with windows overlooking the garden of our neighbors on the first floor. Ray had spent the previous year living in a lightless studio on West 70th Street, while I'd been raised on the Upper East Side in a building as faceless as a digital clock. So for both of us, this was the first time we'd ever dealt with New York at the level of its neighborhoods, as member of a community where multiple overlapping generations, grandmothers, parents, children, chattered on the narrow sidewalks, and store owners recognized your face. At our corner, there was a bar and an Italian deli. Down the block, a pizzeria and a storefront men's club where the gentlemen of the neighborhood took their leisure, sipping cappuccino in their cardigans and borsalinos, speaking a patois of half Italian and half English as they laughed roughly at each other's jokes. Once, shortly after we moved in, I stepped inside the club by accident. I'd been meaning to drop something at the dry cleaners and open the wrong door. No sooner had I entered than the place went silent. 6 or 8 old men glaring from beneath their hat brims, not tense, but expectant, as if I might be bearing a message of some kind. "What do you want?" one finally asked, and realizing where I was, I mumbled an apology and backed away. The way I learned about the block was this. That fall, Lower Manhattan was terrorized by a rapist called the Silver Bullet Bandit, who used ropes and pulleys to repel, this is totally true actually, who used ropes and pulleys to repel into apartment windows like some bizarro Spider-Man. His nickname derived from the silver-plated .22 he used to subdue his victims, after which he would assault them before swinging out onto the streets again. One afternoon, I heard a commotion through my living room window, shouting from the garden below. Looking out, I noticed a cluster of cops serpentining through the foliage, guns drawn, walkie-talkies sputtering like disembodied birds. From 3 stories up, it was like a movie. I could see the scene unfold in choreography, yet I remained at a remove. For 10 or 15 minutes, I watched the officers fan out like a stain until they had spread across the yard. It was only after they regrouped that I turned on the news, where I discovered that the Silver Bullet Bandit had attempted to break into an apartment on my block. In retrospect, I probably should have felt alarmed, but Ray and I had security gates on our windows and a steel door with a Medico lock, which gave our place the feel of a fortress, or at least a well-insulated cell. What I didn't understand until later, though, was that there was an entirely different kind of protection at work here, one that had less to do with locks than with the culture of the street. The next morning, the Silver Bullet Bandit turned himself into the police, an act I found inexplicable until I mentioned it to my upstairs neighbor, who laughed as if I were a child. "Oh, honey," she said, "don't you know where you're living? The guys in the club put the word out. They let them know the cops better find them before they did." I can still remember standing there in the hall outside of my apartment, confused for a moment, then feeling as if all the pieces of the block had fallen into place. Of course, I thought. How could I have missed it? How could I have let those details pass me by? This explained everything. From the men's club to the middle-aged guy who ran numbers in the laundromat, where every Sunday I went to wash my jeans and T-shirts, watching as he made small talk with the neighborhood women, trading slips of paper for their crumpled dollars, occasionally paying someone out. It wasn't the first time I'd encountered such a neighborhood. A couple of summers ago, my friend Steve had taken an apartment on the corner of Mott and Houston Street, just a few doors from the original St. Patrick's Cathedral, where Francis Ford Coppola had filmed The Godfather's baptism scene. It was an ancient tenement in the heart of Little Italy, and the night Steve moved in, a hot night, mid-July, New York steaming like a broken radiator, we'd gone out on the fire escape to drink some beers. No sooner had we gotten settled than there was a knock on the door. The building superintendent, a 50-something woman with iridescent blonde hair like a helmet, ordered us to come inside. "The guys in the club don't like people on the fire escape," she said, as if this needed no further explanation, before she faded into the dingy hallway like a spirit or a wraith. We were confused, Steve and I, but there was something in her tone, a bite, an edge, that made us listen, which was, of course, exactly what she meant for us to do. The next day we learned that the club in question was the Reaganite Social Club, John Gotti's Manhattan headquarters. The last time there had been trouble in the neighborhood, the guys there had taken the offender up to the roof of this very building and pitched him headlong into Houston Street, 6 floors below. Thinking about it, I began to calculate territory, distance, realizing with a growing surety just how my own block worked. Our men's club, I suddenly understood, was a satellite, and this was gaudy turf. My neighbor gave me a knowing look and went upstairs. I turned the key in my front door and stepped inside, heart beating a little fast. It was not fear, however, that ran through me, but rather ecstasy, exhilaration, the buzz of getting close to something dangerous and thrilling at once. I've been fascinated by the Mafia since age 10, when I discovered Mario Puzo's The Godfather in my father's bookcase. I bet you it's back there, actually. It had drawn me in, this novel, had compelled me from the cover with its oddly gothic lettering to the electric density of the writing, which introduced me to a world I'd never imagined, a world almost exactly opposite to the one in which I lived. Here, I learned about Omerta, the Sicilian code of silence, with its dictate that disloyalty was punishable by death. Here I learned about family, about how blood trumped everything. Santino, Vito Corleone, cautions his oldest son, Sonny, never let anyone outside the family know what you're thinking. Never let them see the dirt under your fingernails. For a kid like myself, with parents for whom extended family often seemed a burden, a scene like Connie Corleone's wedding, with which the novel opens, was a revelation, a vision of something solid and substantial, the kind of ritual that lent depth and meaning to your life. On the rare occasions that we interacted with our relatives, my grandparents' Seder say, where 3 generations sat at a long white cloth table drinking wine and muttering the ancient syllables of a lost language, I pretended we were the Corleones, our lineage co-parents, and our purpose unified. More than anything, it was here that I had my first encounter with an enigma that would soon absorb me, the enigma of sex. There it was, on page 27, Sonny Corleone's quickie fucked with his sister's maid of honor, Lucy Mancini, a citation my friends and I could quote from memory. She put her arms around his neck and hung there as he opened his trousers. Then he placed both hands beneath her bare buttocks and lifted her. She gave a little hop in the air so that both her legs were wrapped around his upper thighs. His tongue was in her mouth, and she sucked on it. He gave a savage thrust that banged her head against the door. She felt something burning pass between her legs. She let her right hand drop from his neck and reached down to guide him. Her hand closed around an enormous, I can't read this line out loud. Her hand closed around an enormous, blood-gorged hole of muscle. Pulsating in her hand like an animal, and almost weeping with grateful ecstasy, she emptied it into her own wet, turgid flesh. The thrust of its entry, the unbelievable pleasure made her gasp, brought her legs up almost around his neck, and then, like a quiver, her body received the savage arrows of his lightning-like thrusts, innumerable, torturing, arching her pelvis higher and higher, until for the first time in her life she reached a shattering climax, felt his hardness break, and then the crawling flood of semen over her thighs. Slowly her legs relaxed from around his body, slid down until they reached the floor. They leaned against each other out of breath. To read that passage now, as you can see, is to cringe at my pre-adolescent ardor, to wince at the purple writing, enormous blood-gorged hole of muscle, to want to turn away. Nonetheless, I recall the excitement, the illicit pleasure of pulling the novel off the shelf and paging through until I found that sequence, feeling my blood rise with the rhythm of the words. I don't want to admit it, but I have to. There's something elemental in Puzo's description, something that spoke to me about a more direct way of living, which I, who dwelt as much as anywhere in books and language, longed to know. It's not that I had any real desire for savage sex against a doorway, okay, maybe a little, or even that I understood in any fundamental sense the meaning of the act. Like most 10-year-old boys, though, I wanted to be a man in the most archetypal sense, and that's what Sonny was. He was a figure of instinct who grabbed what he wanted, which represented to my mind an intoxicating power. I utterly missed the cautionary point Puzo was making, that Sonny was a train wreck, a loose cannon, a force of chaos for both his family and himself. For me, that was part of his attraction, that sense of living on the edge. Even after I moved from The Godfather to other Mafia books, by 12 I had a library of them, mostly nonfiction, like Peter Moss's Novallaci papers and Gaetoli's Honor Thy Father, as well as Puzo's memoir and essay collection, The Godfather Papers and Other Confessions. I found myself drawn to the hotbeds. Albert Anastasia, gunned down in the barber shop of New York's Park Sheraton Hotel on October 25th, 1957. Or Lepke Buckhalter, most vicious of the legendary Jewish gangsters. Jewish gangsters? Now there was something to be proud of. I founded Murder Inc. and shared a last name with my father's cousin, inspiring endless fantasies that we might be relatives. writing my first proto-novel, it was little surprise that it was called Gang War in Chicago, or that it featured a Sonny-like protagonist who fought and fucked his way through the 40 or so handwritten pages I managed to complete like an animating spirit, a two-dimensional manifestation of the man I wished I might become. If I'm to be honest, there are other aspects, or were other aspects of mob culture that fascinate me as much, perhaps, as Sonny's vast, pervasive hid. I was compelled by the structure, the organization, by the idea that crime could be a business, that in some odd way everyone might win. I liked the notion that, as Don Vito says, we're not murderers, that mobsters might at heart be reasonable men. Such an idea grew on me slowly, but by the time The Godfather Part 2 came out in 1974, with its double portrait of both the young Vito Corleone and his son Michael, I had begun to appreciate, however dimly, a more subtle approach. I'm tempted to say this had to do with getting older, that I recognize the role of nuance, but the truth is that seems too easy, or more accurately, not nuanced enough. No, it's more that unlike Sonny, Michael was someone I recognized. Ivy League educated, upwardly mobile. In the novel, he laments his wife's conversion to Catholicism because he would have preferred the children to be Protestants. It was more American. He could have been a member of my family, but its emphasis on assimilation, on leaving the peasant past behind. What's more, he was positively Machiavellian, keeping his own counsel, the value of which I was starting to see. I lived in a universe of agendas, from the teachers with their rules and grade lists to my parents who always seemed to be maneuvering, talking about my future as if it had something to do with them. To ask for advice, or even to discuss a problem was like walking through a minefield. I never knew when a conversation might become a challenge or a fight. My natural inclination was to battle, but if this made me identify with Sonny, I knew at heart I was not that kind of person, too bookish to be elemental, not forceful in an instinctual sense. Still, every time I tried to play it cool, I couldn't pull it off. I had a temper, I was impatient, I cared what other people thought. I might, in other words, be too much like Michael to be Sonny, but I was also too much like Sonny to be Michael. Both existed inside me where they'd forever slug it out. And yet, that penultimate image of The Godfather Part 2, in which Michael sits alone, staring into the middle distance, this, in many ways, is what I have always aspired to. That ability to remain self-contained and inviolable, solitary, ruthless, absolutely unyielding in whatever needs to be done. As it turns out, the reality of mob life was far less epic than either The Godfather or my other reading led me to believe. John Gotti might be the dapper Don in his camel's hair coats and Italian suits, but for the paysans in my neighborhood, existence was prosaic, not unlike a regular job. They weren't deciding whether to ship the family's interests to Nevada, or orchestrating epic orgies of execution, taking up their enemies in elaborate extravaganzas of death. They were watching the block from the men's club, collecting debts, doing the small things to maintain the business, keeping a low profile. For the most part, it was an invisible subtext, something you noticed, if at all, between the lines. The neighborhood pizzeria, for instance, was a drop point in the Pizza Connection case, where several lower Manhattan pizza parlors were used as distribution sites for Gotti family heroin. But I only figured that out later, when one of the pizza clerks, a young guy who always wore white beaters and had his red hair cut in a mullet, reappeared after a few years away. This was the word he used, away, as if he were a character in a novel, as if there were no distance anymore between reality and fiction. His neck, wrists, fingers adorned with gold jewelry, a reward for honoring the code of Omerta, a thank you from a grateful Don. Even on the rare occasions that things got overt, it was over in a heartbeat, so fast you wondered if anything had truly happened at all. One night in the late 80s, a low-level hood shot an undercover officer in Queens. The next afternoon, I came home to find the block cordoned off with sawhorses, a regiment of feds and cops, all wearing windbreakers emblazoned on the back with FBI or NYPD in large yellow block letters, moving on the social club like an assault team. One by one, they led the old men out in handcuffs. There was a bit of griping, and a few women spat on the ground at the cops' feet. But mostly, the atmosphere was benign. By the next morning, the club had reopened, and the men were back, sipping espresso, talking to each other in their pigeon tongue. There's a way, of course, in which this puts the lie to my excitement, my feeling of proximity to a more elemental life. On another level, though, it made the whole thing real and three-dimensional, shifting it from the realm of fantasy to the more complex medium of the everyday. It was, to push the point, more like a relationship, a feeling that intensified the longer I lived on the block. Towards the end of our time there, Ray got a job waitressing in a restaurant a block or two towards Houston Street. a trendy spot with a southwestern kitchen and an owner who liked to have sex on the tables after the place had closed. By that time, we were married, and he never messed with her, but his buddies used to keep an eye out for her, as well as some of the other employees who lived in the neighborhood when they headed home after closing at 2 or 3 a.m. As the restaurant shut down, a group of men would materialize from the shadows, one on each corner throughout the neighborhood. They never said a word, just watched as Ray and her co-workers walked the darkened streets of Soho, waiting until everyone had gotten inside their buildings before disappearing like so many wisps of smoke. The word was that Gotti had been a backer at the restaurant, a rumor that seemed both too obvious to be inaccurate and too good to be true. Certainly the owner fancied himself something of a made man, with his slick-back hair and tough guy talk, and the bar was often occupied by flat-faced guys in tight suits and flashy jewelry, hitting on the Alaskan bartender who had ice blue eyes and almond skin like a sexy Eskimo. The confirmation came on a Saturday evening when Ray was working the dinner shift and I was home alone. Around 10 o'clock the phone rang and I answered, only to hear the clatter of the restaurant through the line. Somewhere in the mix I could pick out Ray's voice, but there was a low whisper just below the level of comprehension, and I could not understand what she was trying to say. Are you okay? I said. Her answer sounded like, it's hot in here. What? I said, not sure about the message, what I was supposed to do. Ray spoke up a little. God, he's here. I can't talk to him in the back. Sit in the bar, you can't miss him. Within 1 minute, I was out the door. When I got to the restaurant, it was full but not crowded, about the norm for a Saturday night. At the bar, a young guy, thickly muscled, had lined up a row of $100 bills and was drinking his way through the meetings and kept his eye on the door. In the back, John Gotti sat at a table with a cluster of men. No one went near him, not even the waiters, although everyone knew he was there. I ordered a beer and chatted briefly with the bartender, watching Gotti out of the corner of my eye. In person, he was smaller than I'd imagined, with sallow skin and hair blown back in a garish pompadour. The more I looked at him, the more he appeared like a chimera, an elaborate construction of some kind. This was it. I thought, this little man surrounded by bodyguards because he could not go out on his own. Then he turned toward me, and for a moment our eyes crossed. His gaze was flat, gray, inexpressive, exactly like a shark's. Briefly, he scanned my face, cataloging my features for something he might recognize, and satisfied he didn't know me, he smiled and looked away. Later that night, after she got home, Ray told me that when Gotti had come in, he'd been assigned her section, but before she could serve him, a bodyguard had thrown a crumpled 20 at her, warning her to stay away. At first, she'd been upset, but then she'd seen the situation for what it was, and anyway, $20 was $20. To me, however, the evening felt like an initiation, a conflation of my present and my past. For the last few years, I'd seen a kinder, gentler side of the mafia, with all their daily interactions in the neighborhood and the security of living in their world. Yet those eyes, their opaqueness, spoke of proclivities far more dangerous, the kinds of impulses that had compelled me all along. It was like coming face to face with Sunny, like being drawn into some elemental fantasy of my own. I should have been scared, especially when we made eye contact, but in fact the moment exhilarated me. Or not exhilarated, no, or more than that, as if for one fleeting instant I might eclipse the distance between such a man and myself, and in so doing, finally belong. Thank you.